Hello everybody and welcome to the final part of the first ever episode of Dragon's Digits. In the first three parts, we've already gone through the basics of data analysis, the impact of winning and team styles, and the different player styles and their significance. In this episode, I'm going to be putting it all together as I do a deep dive into the player I feel is the most underrated, Stixxay, and his underlining numbers that support my theory. So let's start by deciding on which player style to associate with Stixxay when he's playing at his best, using the player styles talked about in the previous part. As far as I'm concerned, Stixxay prefers a medium to high share of the resources. I think at his best he is the secondary funnel on the team, although he can certainly take on a role as the main source of resources, such as in Game 5 versus TSM in the Spring 2016 finals, where he was playing Rageblade Tristana and they built basically their entire team comp around him. How do we know that he is a sort of medium share, secondary funnel type player? So if we look at his earned gold per minute, that doesn't factor in sort of base gold. It's just looking at basically your share of resources, how many resources you're getting per minute. He was 7th in Spring 2018 and 4th in Summer 2018 on a team that played average length games, 5th in Spring and 4th in Summer in terms of the length of their games. So if you look at Stixxay's numbers, you can see right here in earned gold per minute, he's number 7 amongst ADCs in North America. This is for Spring Split. Now, his percentage of team's gold was 4th in Spring and 1st in Summer amongst North American ADCs, though this was really more as a result of a lackluster team than anything else. The rest of the players weren't doing a very good job getting their resources, or laning very strong, or just playing around the map well, so it sort of boosted some of Stixxay's numbers, and they really relied on him to carry the game. Now, whilst he can definitely be a high resource player, though he's primarily a mid-resource share player, he's definitely a low-focus player. He's at his best when he's given a chance to play an isolated 2v2 lane with a strong laning support, such as Biofrost. Stixxay's laning mechanics are some of the best in the world, so this allows him to play a low-focus style extremely effectively. This is a bit harder to prove through stats than his resource share, but it can be proven in-game if you watch him, though there are certainly some stats that point him in the direction of being a low-focus player. His first blood percentage was fairly average for ADCs in 2018, despite being on the team that got the most first bloods. CLG had a 72% first blood percentage in Summer 2018, while Stixxay only got 11% of the first bloods in CLG's games in Summer 2018, so he was only involved in about 1 in every 6 or 7 of CLG's first bloods, so they're really not playing around bot side that much. But even more so than that, CLG averaged the 4th worst first Drake percentage in Spring, and the 2nd worst first Drake percentage in Summer, despite being one of the best early game teams all year. If you look at the Summer stats, they had the 2nd highest gold differential at 15 after Cloud9, and a similar stat but factors in a few more other things. Their early game rating was also number 2 behind Cloud9. However, their first Dragon percentage was 39%, which you can see is the 2nd worst, only ahead of Optic Gaming, which shows that they don't play around their bot lane nearly as much as some of the teams at the top did, like Team Liquid or Golden Guardians. So, well, I think Stixxay is a fairly versatile player, which is another one of his strengths. I think it's fairly clear he operates best as a medium to high / low player. That is, medium to high resource share, low focus. Now, let's look a bit at team style and a bit at the style of the teams he's been on and is going to be on. So let's start with 2018 CLG's makeup and team style. Now, in 2018, CLG was a very strong early game team. They were good throughout the first 15 minutes. This was mostly as a result of the bot lane with Stixxay and Biofrost and their strong laning, as well as Reignover's smart early game pathing. Now, if you look at it, obviously they had a really good first blood percentage, like I said, 72% in the Summer Split, which is 1st in the league. However, not a lot of that went bot lane. Now, despite their early game numbers, CLG's top jungle and mid were actually a net negative in gold and XP, which meant that their entire lead, their sort of second best goal differential at 15 minutes came entirely and then some from the bot lane, and basically Reignover's early game pathing was just sort of negating Darshan and who he's weak laning. Meanwhile, the bot lane was doing most of the heavy lifting. Now, while what they had in a good early game, they lacked in a terrible mid game. Their 15 through 25 minutes were pretty abysmal. They often blew any early game lead they did have, causing any wins they got to take much longer than they should have, and causing a lot more losses than they could afford to take in order to make the playoffs. They were a very weak team as a whole. They missed the playoffs both splits, coming 7th in spring and 8th in summer. There wasn't much synergy to the way they played or sort of focus the way they played. All their lanes were very supportive in their style, and Reignover was about as supportive of a jungler as you can get, so they didn't really have any clear person to play around or any obvious carry, and so as a result, despite the fact that he's not really even that much of a carry player, almost all their wins ended up coming from Stixxay hard carrying, particularly during their winning streaks at the end of 2018 spring and at the beginning and end of 2018 summer. Now, looking forward to 2019, CLG's makeup and team style would be fairly similar to 2018, but with a few key improvements. They picked up one of the best carries in the league in Power of Evil, which will allow both him and Stixxay to play to their individual strengths. They promoted Wiggly, who is also a supportive style jungler, same as Reignover, but hopefully will be less one-dimensional than Reignover. A lot of people seem to put a lot of hope in him, and you hear a lot of good things from people in the scene about him, so hopefully he ends up transitioning well and can be a key piece on CLG. You should expect CLG to focus mid lane primarily and top lane secondarily, and try to put as much pressure on the top side so that Stixxay and Biofrost get isolated 2v2s almost every game. If they could do that, that will be very beneficial to both their success and Stixxay's numbers. Stixxay should be the secondary resource funnel after Power of Evil, which is his ideal position. If Stixxay and Power of Evil can find synergy with one another late game, that will be extremely beneficial to CLG and Stixxay succeeding next year. CLG should be one of the best early game teams, so depending on the way Irene and Weldon run the team strategies and are able to patch CLG's mid to late game, they could easily challenge the top teams, and they currently have the looks of a perfect team makeup to allow Stixxay to shine, though obviously they still have their weaknesses, but that's for another video. Now, moving on to Stixxay individually as a player and looking at his team strengths. One thing that maybe goes a little bit under the radar for many people is that Stixxay is actually the best laning ADC in all of North America. He had the highest gold differential at 10, XP differential at 10, and CS differential at 10 amongst ADCs throughout spring and summer split combined, including the highest gold differential at 10 in both spring and summer split. I prefer, personally, gold, XP, and CS differential at 15. I just think it's a better representation of sort of your laning, like the amount of time you spend in lane, but I couldn't find those exact numbers, though honestly I think they should favor Stixxay even more based off what I've seen from the games. So if you look at the individual player stats, you can see in spring split, you have gold differential, Stixxay's first, XP differential, he's 5th, but he's still positive, and CS differential, he's first. And then summer split, you have gold differential, Stixxay is first by a decent margin. XP differential, he's second, barely behind Double, it's pretty close. And CS differential, he's also second, again, barely behind Doublelift. In addition to that, to those stats that support him being the best laning AD carry in North America, throughout the first 8 games of summer, when CLG was actually winning, I think they were 5-3 or something like that, Stixxay had the highest CS differential at 15 of any player in any role in any major league around the world. I think it was like plus 20 or something like that. Maybe it was like plus 18. I don't really remember the exact number, but I do remember that he did have the highest CS differential of 15 at some point in time. In addition to that, CLG wasn't abusing any of the funnel strats which were popular at the time, and unlike many other players near the top of the list, Stixxay faced only other ADCs during that 8-game winning period, as opposed to other players who had gotten their stats boosted by laning against mages like Vladimir that fell super far behind. So he didn't have any games where he got like 40 CS leads over Vladimir, or he was getting funneled a bunch of resources. It was just in straight up ADC versus ADC matchups. These stats are also supported by the gameplay. If you just focus on CLG's bot lane and ignore the disaster that is the rest of the team last year, then they win lane basically any game, every game. And it's very hard to find a game in which they don't have at least a decent lane phase. For example, the one game in summer that CLG played versus Team Liquid, in which both teams picked an ADC, Stixxay was up 14 CS at 15 minutes over Doublelift, the other top ADC when it comes to laning stats. Then the other game they played against each other, Stixxay picked Vladimir, and we're not going to talk about that game. He was down like 20 CS at 15 minutes. Now, Stixxay's other biggest strength is he has absolutely insane positioning in team fights. So we've seen it before with some of the pop-off plays from Stixxay from the MSI run or the Spring 2016 Finals victory, but it's definitely supported by the stats and supported by his current gameplay, even in a bad year they had this year. So despite CLG having the 5th longest games on average in Spring, having a 39% win rate in Spring, and Stixxay getting the 7th most gold per minute of any ADC, he still managed to output 701 damage per minute, the most of any player in any position in the North American LCS stat split. Only Cody Sun and Sneaky even got above 600 for other ADCs, and no player in the top 4 had below a 60% win rate. So if we dive into that a bit, you can see that for Spring stats, CLG averaged the 5th longest game time, a very middling amount, pretty middle of the table. They were at 7-11, which is a 39% win rate. And then if you go to Stixxay's individual stats, you can see under his earned gold per minute that he actually ranks in 7th, below Cody Sun, Sven, Doublelift, Altec, Sneaky, and Wild Turtle. But if you look at his damage per minute, he's 1st amongst all ADCs and amongst all players. And the only other players in the top are Cody, Sneaky, and Sven, who all played on the top, so the top teams in the league. So he's basically with a way worse win rate, not getting any more resources. He's managing to output significantly more damage than these people, which is incredibly impressive. Throughout Spring and Summer splits, Stixxay averaged the 2nd most kills per game of any ADC in NA, only behind Cody Sun, on a team who, again, won 39% of their games. They went 7-11 in both Spring and Summer split. Meanwhile, Cody Sun won 60% of the games he played in. Kills are obviously, as I touched in the second part, heavily influenced by winning, and CLG picked up the 6th most kills in both Spring and Summer split, picking up 79 less kills than 100 Thieves, which is the team that Cody Sun played on. So despite all that, he still managed to pick up the 2nd most kills, showing that he is doing a large share of the heavy lifting when it comes to CLG's team fight victories. You can see here in Spring Split, if you look at kills, he was 2nd place, despite the fact that Cody, Altec, Doublelift, and Sven all played more than 18 games because of tiebreakers. So that's very, very impressive stat in addition. So now we can see that he is one of the best team fighting players in North America, and he's one of the best laners in North America, but what else does he bring to the table? So in addition to those are definitely his main strengths. He's also displayed some pretty good communication skills and seems like an easy teammate to work with. This is just what I've seen from like sort of some of the in-houses or what people have mentioned in interviews. This is a bit harder to know, but he definitely doesn't seem like a bad teammate. And keep in mind, he does all of this while not driving a lot of the jungler's attention to bot lane, which allows the jungler to spend a lot more time in other lanes and get other people fed, players that like to be the center of the team, such as Power of Evil. Now, we talked about his strengths, so let's talk about some of his weaknesses. So the main weaknesses I perceive in Stixxay is that he doesn't solo take over the game very often. Like, you'll see those Doublelift performances, or like Uzi performances, or they just decide like they're gonna win and they just like 1v9 and it's just protect the Doublelift or, you know, protect the Vayne or whatever. And Stixxay doesn't really have those performances as much. Usually he needs a solid team performance to allow him to play his best, and he just isn't able to take over the game the same way as someone who's a more carry player like Doublelift would. But that's really just a stylistic differences, though there is definitely some downsides to not being able to carry games like that. While he has a wide range of ADC champions at his disposal, he's not very capable of playing mages or other off-meta picks bot lane, like I talked about with the Vladimir, and his few attempts at playing a non-ADC were some of the main reasons some of his stats aren't even better than they are. If you factor out some of those games, his gold differential, CS differential, and XP differential all probably go up a ton. He's probably definitely first on all of them in summer, and by a pretty large margin. So those are his main weaknesses. They're honestly nothing super big, and definitely a lot less than what his strengths are. So all in all, you can see he's a very capable player. So let's try to ask ourselves, what does Stixxay play like? Who does Stixxay play like? When looking across multiple leagues for a Stixxay comparable, it's pretty hard. Players like Stixxay with low focus, AD carries that are very talented are quite hard to find, but for me, for sure, the player that Stixxay plays the most like is Ruler in Korea. They have the exact same style of resource and focus levels. They are both tremendous laners. Ruler had the highest gold differential at 10 in the LCK Summer 2018 for ADCs, much like Stixxay did in North America. They both have amazing positioning. Ruler might be the best team fighting ADC in the world, and Stixxay is not that far behind. So I think that's definitely the best comparison when looking to compare Stixxay to somebody, whereas someone like Doublelift is more like a Teddy or an Uzi. So to recap a bit, Stixxay is the best laning AD carry in North America. He's the best team fighting AD carry in North America. He doesn't eat up a lot of resources, and that includes time, not just because time is a resource too, right? He doesn't eat up a lot of jungler time and a lot of roam time, so he actually eats up less resources even than it seems like he might. He definitely does not get fair recognition, as he isn't a carry type of player and was on a subpar team last year. Honestly, the fact that him or Biofrost didn't even make the third All-Star team last year in terms of All-Star voting is pretty inconceivable to me. I think they definitely were both top 3 players, particularly Stixxay. And honestly, in my opinion, the only AD carries who can even touch Stixxay coming into 2019 are Doublelift and Bang, and the other ADCs are at least a decent step behind. So before I wrap up the episode, to sort of solidify my points, I took a lot of the things I was talking about and put them in a table. As you can see here, I got every single player who played a majority of the games for their team throughout 2018, and I took their gold differential at 10 throughout the spring and summer split and then divided it by 2. Same thing with their XP differential. I then utilized the early game score we decided on earlier by adding their gold differential and XP differential together to give us an early game score. Then I took their damage per minute and kills per game from the spring split, as I felt like it was a bit more accurate, seeing as there was less sort of off-meta pick shenanigans or funnel shenanigans. So I just thought that for damage and kills, it was a bit better to take just the spring split numbers. So as you can see, for gold differential at 10, if we sort this by value, you see that Stixxay is far and away the best, an average of 80 better than anybody else, and he's over 200, while Doublelift is the only other player even over 100. Stixxay, Doublelift, Deftly, and Sven are the only 4 even positive on the list. Then when we move on to XP differential, he also tops XP differential once again, with Doublelift being the only person who comes even close. So then when we take the combined early game score, it's not that hard to see that he is well above everybody else, almost 100 above everybody else. And the only other people who are positive were Doublelift, Deftly, and Sven. Deftly in large part due to the fact that he just played a lot of Heimerdinger, who's a really big lane bully champion in summer, which sort of skewed his numbers in a positive manner. So Stixxay is very clearly the best laning AD carry in North America, or certainly up there. Then if we look at his damage, as I already talked about, it was the highest in spring, with a lot of the other people being close to him not being good laners. The only 2 people who got above 600 were Cody and Sneaky, and they both have negative early game scores, right? And then just looking at kills per game, again on a player who doesn't get a lot of focus, this is pretty impressive. He's number 2 in terms of kills per game in the spring split, decently above everybody except for Cody-san, and I guess Alltech is kind of close. And again, both of those people had negative early game scores. So his stats across the board support him being the best laning ADC in North America, the best team fighting ADC in North America, and definitely one of the most, if not the most underrated player in North America. Thank you guys for watching. That's it for the first ever episode of Dragon's Digits. I hope you learned something today, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next video. Thanks for watching, guys.